Okay. Hi everyone, this is Payanna and welcome to my channel. So in this video I'm going to talk about books that are insanely popular and that I didn't like. So first of all, I just want to say I have nothing against any of these authors. I have nothing against you if you like these books. I don't have a problem with that. What I'm about to say is entirely based on my personal tastes and, in one case, my personal experiences. And it just concerns me, my opinion, and that's it. And the thing is, I'm normally the kind of person who likes everything. Like, no matter what it is, I can always find something good about it, like something good to say about it, even though I didn't like it. But sometimes I just don't see the appeal at all. So let's get started. The first one is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And this is what it has to say for itself. For millions of readers, this book was a revelation, the key to a spiritual quest that anyone can embark upon, an invitation to follow your dream to find personal truth. Not for me, it wasn't. So I read this quite a while back, so my memory's probably not that specific. This is the story of a kid who lives in Spain and who has a dream about there being gold under the pyramids in Egypt. So he decides to go there and find the gold. Yeah, this is a rehash of the there's gold under the fountain dream story, which exists pretty much all over the world. So what this book is doing here is like setting a premise for a story, like a moralistic tale that already exists. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I do get really annoyed when it's done in such a simplistic way and it gets so much attention. This is one of the best-selling books in the world, like anywhere ever. This is like on that 20 best-selling books list, along with the Bible, Lord of the Rings, and the Harry Potter series. Like, it's insane how popular this book was. So this kid gets to Egypt and I think he's in Cairo, and he goes up a big hill and he gets to the top of the hill and there's a shop there selling crystals, and he goes into the shop, meets the shop owner, who is really annoyed because he's losing all his clients, no one will come to his shop anymore and he doesn't understand why. And the kid says, oh, well, maybe you should clean your shop because it's dirty. This is a philosophical book that is compared on here to The Little Prince. I just don't see it. So the kid sets about cleaning this man's shop, and he cleans everything and he cleans the crystals, and he decides to set up a tea salon outside because, hey, people are climbing the hill, so they'll be thirsty when they get to the top, so they can have some tea and then they can go on and buy some crystals, and it works really well and everybody's happy, and this kid gets some cash and the shop owner sells some crystals and it works wonderfully. And I just don't understand what this has to do with any of the story or any kind of philosophical argument. Like, that is basic commerce. Like, when you have a shop, you need to keep it clean. That's page 1 of commerce. Keep your shop clean, smile at the customers, don't mess up the change. That's it. That's basically page 1. So then he has to cross the desert to get to the pyramids, and on the way he meets the Alchemist. And you'd think the Alchemist has some kind of massive central role in this, but I was just so disappointed. Like, I thought maybe there was going to be some alchemy, maybe he was going to teach him how to make gold or something. Instead of that, he just reels off some homespun philosophy to him, and about, follow your dreams and find the truth and blah, blah, blah. And then the kid gets to the pyramids, gets to where, like, he saw the gold buried in his dream, digs a hole, there's no gold, he goes to sleep, has another dream about there being gold under the doorstep of his house, and so he goes home to Spain, and then he finds the gold under his doorstep. Philosophy. Maybe I'm missing something, I don't know. I'm not the brightest of people, I'm a very literal kind of person, so if you kind of try and hide hidden messages in a story, there's a big likelihood of me not being able to pick it up. But yeah, sorry, The Alchemist. I didn't see the point of you. The second one is A Fall of Kingdoms by Morgan Rhodes, and okay, so this was marketed to me as a sort of Game of Thrones for teenagers. Okay. I mean, I just thought it was odd, just the general style of it, because it is so blatant that, like, it's pumped from Game of Thrones. Like, it is so obvious, and I mean, I know it was kind of supposed to be the Game of Thrones for teenagers, but I don't see why it had to be so obvious. I mean, by all means, inspire yourself from stuff that you like, but why do you need to make it more so obvious? Like, there's a kind of Melisandre type red witch with a big red dress, there's a character called Theon, and there's a kind of like dispute going on between kingdoms. And there was one detail which really struck me, and I don't know if this is true or not, but like, if you read Game of Thrones, all the chapters are titled with the name of the character that's involved in that particular chapter. In this book, I honestly, this is how I felt when I saw this. It honestly felt like she thought, okay, I'm not going to make it like Game of Thrones and put the name of the character at the beginning of each chapter. I'm going to put the name of the kingdom instead. And I was like, why? Because, I don't know, that just struck me so much as overthinking it. Oh, let's make it so. It's not like Game of Thrones. Look, I changed this bit of it. I don't know, that really struck me. It really stood out. And so when I read the description of the book, there are essentially 3 characters that were introduced to, and one of them is this character that's supposed to have been brought up in like a really barbaric and violent kind of situation. Like, he's in this kingdom and they're all really kind of obsessed with violence. He is a massive sop, this character. He is not, like, he does not have the psychological workings of a person who has grown up surrounded by violence. Like, he is really emotional and really soppy. So that just didn't make sense to me at all. It didn't work. And there's a scene with this character where his dad is like talking to the court, and his dad has a ward. And this character is really kind of jealous of this ward because his father's like spending so much time with him and tutoring him instead of tutoring his son. So, you know, this makes his character kind of bitter. And then there's this really weird scene where the father kind of gets the ward, stands him in front of the court. He's there addressing the court, gets out a dagger and stabs his ward. And then the son's like, oh wow, he's killed his ward, so like, I'm his favourite now. In what world does that make any kind of sense? So the king has like spent time and energy tutoring this kid to then just stab him in the heart in order to prove to his son how much he loves his son. Why didn't you just tutor your own son instead of going to all that trouble? Just weird. The dynamic between, there are 3 kingdoms involved in this narrative, and they're on the map, they're like Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, they're like all on top of each other, and the one in the middle is the one that's supposed to provide food for the other 2 kingdoms. So Estonia and Lithuania. Those aren't the names of the kingdoms, but that's what I'm going with. I can't remember what they're called, but and what I found just odd about this was like both kingdoms they just really disrespect Latvia. Like, they really hate Latvia, and Latvia's the one that's providing you food. Like, you don't want to go to war with Latvia because otherwise you won't have anything to eat or drink. So that didn't make sense to me. And there's this odd scene at the beginning with this character, the Latvian character, who sees his father die in front of his eyes, and that kind of sparks him into creating this rebellion that's like the focal point of this story. And it just makes no sense, because like this character that gets killed, we're not introduced to him in any way. He's just some kind of wine seller, I think, and he's supposed to like sell the best wine in the kingdom. And I don't know why he gets killed. Like, why is he not respected? Like, I don't know, that just makes no sense to me at all. I could have forgiven it had it been a first novel, but I looked up, because I'd never heard of Morgan Rhodes before, so I thought, oh, this is probably a new author who's just starting out. And then I looked up the author and realised it was a pen name for another author who'd already written books, so sorry, but I couldn't forgive that. At this point, I would like to give you a warning. If you are a big fan of 50 Shades of Grey, stop watching now. You've been warned. So, 50 Shades of Grey. This one needs a bit of a backstory, because 50 Shades of Grey started becoming really big at the same time that I started working as a bookseller. So I was working in this bookshop. We had this insanely large stand which was covered in 50 Shades of Grey, and obviously they were selling really well, and neither me nor any of my colleagues expressed any kind of will or desire to read this. I knew it was some kind of BDSM erotica, and I honestly don't care for erotica. So at the start, I just thought, okay, this is the new thing. It's not for me. I'm not going to go near it. Then the rest of the series came out. About a year later, a couple of years later, I was working in a different bookshop, and clients were coming in, and it was it was a book that was, they like to talk about this book, the clients. And I remember one in particular was there, and she was talking to my colleague who was also female, and so there was her, there was my colleague, there was me, and I was looking after a client who was a man. So there was just the four of us in the shop, and I was looking after this customer, and this woman client was standing there in silence, just staring at my colleague, saying, oh, I've got something I need to tell you. And then she looked at the man, and I was like, what? And then she said, hang on a second, she was waiting for the man to leave the shop because she didn't want to talk about 50 Shades of Grey with a man present. Okay. And then she started telling my colleague about it, about how wonderful it was, about how brilliant it was. And then she started telling me, and I just didn't care. I still didn't care at this point. I was like, yeah, BDSM erotica, don't care. And then my colleague read it, and then she started going on at me about how brilliant it was. And then a friend of mine we'd been to, when we were doing our course in bookselling, she was in my class, and she'd also really recommended it to me, which I remember her telling this all the people doing this course, and they were all really shocked. They were like, what, you like 50 Shades of Grey? And she said, yeah. Don't read it expecting to have some brilliantly written novel, because it's not, but it's pretty cool. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna sit down and read this thing, because apparently I don't know, I guess I wanted to see what all the hype was about. I'd kind of heard, like, obviously, like I said, I knew it was erotica, BDSM, and I knew about the really famous, legendary tampon scene, which kind of freaked me out, to be honest. But anyway, basically I went into this incredibly unprepared. So I started reading the first chapter, and I went into this, I mean, it was really long, really boring, I didn't enjoy it at all, but I thought, okay, this isn't about Anastasia and you know, her really kind of superficial personality. It's about the sex, so I'll try and get to that bit. And then Christian Grey comes in and she has to interview him, and it's a bit weird. And then he starts stalking her. Like, he tracks her phone. That's not normal. As I continued reading this, honestly, I can't find words to describe the amount of shock and horror and disgust that I felt. It was completely, I mean, I know I often say I read books and they're not what I expected, but this was just, I just, wow. Like, what this is a manual for domestic abuse. That is what it is. Anastasia Steele she is going into a relationship with a man who is basically a psychopathic, narcissistic pervert. He is controlling, and he wants to control every aspect of her life, what she eats, how she dresses, where she goes. There's even a scene when she escapes to go and be with her mother. I mean, again, this is going back a bit, but I think she goes to be with her mother, and he starts stalking her, and he follows her over there, and Christian Grey stalks her, and he comes over because they're in a different state, and he travels over and turns up, and her mother's like, oh wow, he's so romantic. No, he's a fucking narcissistic pervert. Like, what is wrong with you? And I have been in an abusive relationship. There was no BDSM involved, but everything else was. Like, like, he is violent with her. I think he slaps her at one point. He spanks her or something because she's not being obedient, which is what abusive guys do. And I went through this. I'm here to tell you, it is not sexy. It is not. These men's aim in life is to destroy the person, the victim. And everyone's saying, oh yeah, but she was consensual. No, because when we get to the famous tampon scene, I mean, the bit that shocked me about that was not the bit about the tampon. It's the bit about she's getting raped in this scene. She is getting raped. She is not consensual at all. It's just horrible, and I fail to understand why anyone could find that kind of thing appealing. And having been through a relationship with a very controlling person who controlled what I ate, when I ate, where I went, how I dressed, who I spoke to, everything, when I went out and when I came back, I was just horrified. I was horrified. I relived a lot of I have PTSD because of that relationship, by the way, and it just brought it all back. It was so horrific. So, 50 Shades of Grey, I didn't read it to the end. I really struggled hard until the fucking tampon scene, and I can't believe I'm talking about this on my channel, but yeah. I hate this book. I really, really hate it. It's just appalling. Yeah. Hey, let's bring this down a bit. I didn't think I'd end up shouting, but I did. I was angry. Anyway, moving on. The Knights of Emerald by Anne Robillard. And I want to apologise because in a previous video I referred to this series as the Emerald Knights. I didn't know what the English title was. It's the Knights of Emerald in English. And this is a high fantasy series that is also a YA teenager kind of thing. And it's huge. It's absolutely huge. I don't know about the rest of the world, but it's really huge in France. A lot of my friends read it, various ages, and eventually I started reading it too. Let's just say I was horrifically disappointed. So this takes place in an empire, the Empire of Emeralds, and with the Emperor Emerald I. So everything's called Emerald. It's great. And this emperor has a group of knights called the Knights of Emerald, and they are kind of like magicians. They have powers, and their leader is a man called Wellan, who is really handsome, and he's the most intelligent and the best strategist, and he's the most powerful, and he's the best at everything. He's also the best at being like the biggest dickhead imaginable. He is such a horrible character, and I hated him from page one. I was just like, okay, I'm really not going to like you. You and me are not going to be friends. This empire is under threat by a creature, I guess I should say, who's this kind of bit massive insectoid race. Yeah? And it's just weird. Like, this character is like the bad guy, this like insectoid lord, wants to invade the human world, only he can't because he doesn't understand how humans function. So all his like invasion attempts fail. So his solution to this is to rape human women in order for them to have hybrid offspring that he can then capture and bring them up and educate them himself, and hopefully they will help him to understand humans being like half human and half insectoid. Okay, so in the Court of the Emerald Knights, they receive a congregation from a neighbouring kingdom with the Queen, who is presenting them with her offspring, who is the offspring, the product of the rape between her and the insectoid lord. Yeah. So, what I don't understand at this point is, if this, like, insect lord is incapable of understanding, like, humans and how they function, how the hell was he able to get inside a castle that's presumably heavily guarded? So he presumably managed to infiltrate this kingdom, get to the castle, get inside the Queen's chambers, and rape her, and then disappear without leaving a trace. And I don't understand why he went for the Queen. Like, surely it would make more sense for him to find some random peasant girl and do it with her. I mean, it would be less complicated than having to infiltrate a castle, but okay, whatever. Queen presents the Emerald, the Emperor Emerald I with her offspring, this little girl called Kira, who looks human, only she has mauve skin. And she asks the Emperor to look after her because, like, she explains what happened, that she's the product of this rape between her and the insect lord, and he's going to come back and capture her, and she doesn't want that, so she wants them to look after her because apparently she's not safe in their kingdom. Okay, and the thing is, Wellan is there, and he sees the Queen from this neighbouring kingdom, and he instantly falls in love with her, because he is an insanely superficial character. As I said, I really didn't like him. And so the Queen and her party beetle off back to their kingdom, and later on, the Empire and the Emperor receive news that the insect army has attacked their kingdom. I thought he couldn't, like, invade and attack the human world because he didn't understand it. But anyway, the Emerald Knights all scuttle off over there, and they get to the kingdom, and they get to the castle, and everyone's dead, and the Queen's dead, and Wellan's destroyed, and the other knights are like, maybe we should go around the kingdom and see if there are any survivors. And Wellan says there aren't any survivors. And they're all like, how do you know? And he's like, well, I just know, because I'm the best at everything. Really hate this character. When Wellan gets home, he goes back to his personal chambers to find the ghost of the dead queen in his chambers, basically begging him to have sex with her. And he does. The guy has sex with the ghost of his deceased love that he'd only spoken like half a dozen words to, so romance, I guess. And later on in the story, you find out that this ghost, the ghost of the dead queen, is only sleeping with him in order to make sure that he looks after her daughter properly. So this little girl, the mauve little girl, she wants to make sure that this kid is safe and being properly looked after. Wellan considerably fails to do that. He treats this kid, who's called Kira, I think, he treats Kira with absolute contempt. Like, he hates her. He really makes her life a misery. He stops her from doing anything she wants to do, stops her from going out, and she just has a really, really miserable time because of Wellan. And during all of this time, he is fucking her dead mother. Respect. So I was hoping that at some point in this, Wellan was going to be called out for his behaviour. Because he is horrible. He's even horrible to his, like, the knights. Because, I mean, there's a scene where they're kind of riding along and he says, oh, we should come up with a strategy. Let's do this, this and this. And one of the other knights says, well, maybe we could do it this way. And Wellan just goes, no, I'm the best strategist. Shut up and listen to me. He's so horrible. And I really hoped that someone was going to call him out for his behaviour. But no, at the end of the book 2, they're having this battle with another product of the insect lord's rape on some other species, and they're not powerful enough to beat this creature, so Wellan gets beetled off to a parallel sort of underground world where he is taught like some special kind of higher magic. And this takes 10 years, but like during the 10 years that Wellan's learning, I mean, it takes 10 years in the book, it takes about 2 pages to read, but in like his lifetime it takes 10 years, and then he gets sent back like to the exact same point where they're in this battle. So for the other knights, it's like he was never gone. And all like he's learnt this special magic so he can beat this creature. Why don't they teach this to all the knights? Like, why just Wellan? Why does he like have to be he's so special, he's so amazing? He's not, he's an absolute bastard. That was the end of book 2, and I just thought I can't do this series. I can't do it. It makes no sense. The main character's a total twat and I hate him. So that was my experience of the Knights of Emerald. 1Q84 by Haruki Murakami. Now, before I start this, I'm not going to rant and rave about this one because I have no issue with the writing, I have no issue with the story, I have no issue with the characters, I have no issue with anything. The writer was nominated for the Nobel Literary Prize, and I completely understand why. I completely understand why everyone loves this author. I completely understand. He is a brilliant writer. He is a brilliant author. I'm absolutely not knocking that. But he is Japanese. And again, I don't have any problem with Japanese culture or anything. But the thing about the Japanese is they like contemplating, right? And they like, I mean, you know, they can spend half an hour staring at a cherry blossom tree. Nothing wrong with that. They can spend half an hour staring at a cat. I do that. I don't stare at them in contemplation. It's more like a sort of hysterical adoration, I guess. But I understand why people like this author is what I'm trying to do. But you can just so feel the Japanese culture in it. And when I started reading this, it's a story about this woman who is an assassin. She is a very kind of skilled assassin. She has this special kind of needle thing that she pokes in people's, like, the back of their necks, and it just kills them instantly and it leaves no trace. So she's this incredibly skilled assassin, and she gets caught in a sort of time loop experience and she goes back in time. It is a bit odd. But I don't have a problem with the story. Like, I didn't have a problem with it. What I did have a problem with was just the contemplation side of it. Because you've got a scene where she's walking down this kind of metal stairway on the side of a motorway. And she's like going down the steps and she breaks like the spider's webs, and she breaks the spider's webs. And so there's like half a page about spider psychology. Okay. And then she goes down the stairs a bit more and she looks up and there's a pot plant on a balcony. And then you've got a whole page of like pot plant psychology. Okay. And then she goes down a bit more and she remembers a lesbian experience she had with one of her friends when she was at high school. And that takes up about 3 pages, and you're like, okay. And then later on she goes into, I think she's in a restaurant and she goes for a pee, and there's like this great big section describing what it's like for her to pee. And I don't have a problem with that kind of writing, but I was just overwhelmed by it. I was like, okay. And like I say, there's nothing to say about the writing or the characters or anything. It is brilliant. I completely understand why people like it, but it's not for me. It's not for me. The whole, like, making these extended descriptions of stuff, which if you take them out, the book would probably only be about that big. It's just not for me. The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. I'm really not making friends with this video. So maybe I made the mistake of reading Lord of the Rings before I read The Hobbit. Maybe that was it. But when I did read The Hobbit, I was just... I mean, there is a very big gap between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Like, wow, the level is just... We're in a completely different universe with Lord of the Rings as opposed to Hobbit. And I know it's supposed to be a children's story. I know it was his first novel. But I don't know, like, it's basically a succession of events that go wrong. And that's it. Like, that's all I kind of saw in it. I didn't really see the appeal. I didn't really understand why Bilbo was there, because he just gets roped into this quest that he didn't ask to be on, that's with these dwarves that just turn up in his house for some reason. And I mean, it is a really funny scene, right, at the beginning of the book where all the dwarves are arriving one by one or in pairs, and he's just like, what are you doing here? Why are you in my house? And it is really funny, so it does kind of lend this like comedic effect to it. And then they go on this long adventure and everything goes wrong, and then, you know, they get to the dragon. And the thing that I kind of thought was, like, everything goes wrong. Like, they get caught by the elves, they get attacked by the spiders. And I was like thinking, you're gonna fight a dragon. Like, how are you gonna kill a dragon if you can't even fight off some random spiders or all the other stuff that happens? And then they get to the dragon, they get to the mountain, and they don't know how they're gonna kill the dragon. And I think Bilbo even says, maybe you should have thought of this. And they were like, so they just basically end up in this really random situation where the dragon gets pissed because Bilbo takes a piece of the treasure, and then he gets killed by Bard in the village, who's just this random character with an arrow one arrow, that's all it takes. It's not like in the movie where they have these huge, great steel arrows. It's just a normal arrow, the normal bow, and boom, and that's it, the dragon's dead. That's all it takes. And it's just like completely random. Like the dwarves don't go to the village, they don't ask Bard to do this. There's not all this scene, and I really do love the fact that Peter Jackson in the movies, I never talk about movies that are based on books, but this one, I really want to hand it to Peter Jackson, because he just ironed out everything that I thought was wrong with the book, and just made it all make sense, which is just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So this is one of the rare instances where I actually think the movies are better than the actual book they're based on. Yeah, that was my experience of The Hobbit. A Mermaid in Paris by Mathias Malzieu. I've already made a video about this book, which I kind of regret doing now, because normally when I make a video about a book, it's a book that has already been out for a while. So I get a chance to look at the kind of reception it got, what's been said about it, what people thought of it, did it win an award, did it become a bestseller, But this one, I didn't wait until all of that, and I kind of regret that now. And I think had I waited, I wouldn't have made a video about it. But I did, because I got a huge buzz about it when I bought it. Because it had been a long time since I'd read anything about a mermaid. And the thing was, like, I think I bought it on the day it was released, and I didn't read it straight away. But then, like, the entire internet exploded, like, all the media, like, TV, radio, everything exploded with publicizing this novel. And I was overwhelmed. Like, it's really, really rare when that happens, when the whole world just seems to go crazy, or the whole of France in this case, went crazy about this book. For this book to get so much attention, it needs to contain the answer to life, the universe, and everything. This book must contain the meaning of existence. It's a story about a guy that falls in love with a mermaid. That's pretty much it. And it did have a kind of naive charm about it. And in the video, I didn't say any of the stuff that I didn't like about it. I just said, oh, this book got more publicity than it was worth. And I still stand by what I said in that video. But, I mean, none of it makes sense. Like, it's so weird. Like, the book starts off with this guy who's sitting on the side of the Seine. He's a homeless man, and he hears the singing of the mermaid, and the mermaid sings in order to kill people, and she explains later on that she does this when she feels threatened. So this poor sod who's sitting on the side of the Seine, who's minding his own business, he can't even see the mermaid because she's like underneath the water, and so technically she can't see him either. So, and he's not doing anything, he's just sitting there. So why the hell does she think he's a threat and that he needs to die? And then this guy finds her on the side of the Seine, and she's wounded, so he puts her in his car, drives her to the hospital, gets to the hospital, and the secretary in the hospital won't admit her because she doesn't have a social security card. In what world does that happen? Definitely not in France. Even if you don't have a they won't refuse to treat you just because you have a social security card. And then this woman's like, oh yeah, they're so annoying, these patients that are dying and that don't have their social security cards, because we can't do anything about it. If you're dying and you don't have your social security card, then we will just let you die. There's nothing we can do. How badly does that reflect on the medical profession? Yeah, but anyway, while he's in the hospital, she's in the car in the car park, and there's a guy on the other side of the car park who, again, hasn't noticed her existence. He doesn't know she's there, and she's supposed to be unconscious, so how the hell she knows he's there? Weird. But again, she starts to sing, and this guy dies, and this guy's wife or fiance, who's pregnant, is a nurse at the hospital. She comes out, sees her dead husband / fiance, boyfriend or whatever, and somehow knows that it's the mermaid that killed him. And like, again, how she knows that doesn't really kind of make sense. But anyway, the guy comes out of the hospital, gets back in the car, drives to his apartment, and all this time the mermaid's singing to him to try and kill him, but he doesn't die for some reason because he's the hero. He gets her to his apartment, sticks her in the bath, and she's still trying to kill him. Like, that wouldn't make sense, because you're in a bath miles from the sea, girl. Like, if he dies, you're just gonna stay there. And then this kind of weird dynamic emerges between them, and at one point she sets fire to his apartment, and he gets really angry with her. I mean, why? Why would you get angry with, like, first of all, you're the one who put her there. Second of all, she is from the ocean. She probably doesn't even know what fire is. And it's just weird. And anyway, she's the last mermaid alive. And then they end up falling in love, and they have all this kind of thing going on. And then they record a song together, which I didn't talk about because I didn't think it was relevant at the time. And I didn't think the song was any good. Like, it's just like, I'm a guy, and and she's like, I'm a mermaid, and I mean, maybe I'm just too used to listening to stuff like Avantasia and Winter Sun, so, yeah, this kind of thing passes me by. But the guy who wrote this, he is a lyricist, like, he is a vocalist and a musician. It is his job to write beautiful lyrics, so I thought, surely you can do better than that. But anyway, keep the song in mind for a second, because then at the end of the book, somehow the medical world learns about the mermaid's existence. I don't remember how, but they managed to kind of take her and take her to the hospital where the nurses, like this insanely mad nurse who wants to kill the mermaid because you killed my husband, you bitch, and she wants, like, insanely bent on her dying. And what happens in the hospital is they get some blood from the mermaids, and this nurse gets injected with that blood and starts turning into a mermaid. And the end of the book is this insane kind of race between the guy who's managed to snatch the mermaid back, stuck her in his car, driving her back to the sea so that she can live free, and all this time the nurse is in her car chasing them because she still wants to kill her. And so just the ending is so unbelievable. Like, he gets to the sea, he puts her in the water, she swims off, at which point the nurse comes striding down the beach and then jumps into the sea because she's finished her transformation. And there's this sort of quote where it says, and thus perpetuating the species because she's pregnant. And in what way is that supposed to perpetuate the species? Because now you've got two female mermaids, one of which is really intent. There's nothing that says that this new mermaid who was intent on killing her isn't going to carry on trying to do that. There's nothing that says that that's not going to happen. And even if she is pregnant, she might as well have a girl. So that will leave you with 3 female mermaids. How's that going to help? I don't know. But anyway, the thing is, the guy witnesses the nurse transforming into a mermaid and diving into the sea. He sees this happen. And I thought he's probably going to go back to the hospital, find out what transformed her into a mermaid and try and transform himself. But he doesn't. He goes back to his apartment, finds a bunch of pearls that are the mermaid's tears, sells them. He's got a boat, which is like a restaurant that he has that's kind of a focal point in the novel. And he gets his boat ocean worthy and sails out, and it's supposed to be this like open ending that's to say, oh, he's probably going to find her. How is he going to find her in the middle of the ocean? And even if he does, she's still a mermaid, he's still a man, they still can't be together, and there's probably another mermaid chasing her around the ocean trying to murder her. Wow, what a brilliant ending. 2 things I find good about this novel. Well, there's actually more than that. I mean, Mathias Malzieu is a gateway author, in my opinion. He's the kind of person who writes for people who've never read a book before, and that's fine, but I don't have an issue with that. But yeah, there was just 2 things that I really thought were genius. Is this guy, the character in the book, he's got a cat in his apartment that is black, and the cat is called Johnny Cash. That is brilliant. I'm ridiculously bad at naming animals, but I thought the black cat called Johnny Cash, stroke of genius. And the second thing that I thought was genius, because this man is a musician, the author that is, and he has a band, he recorded the song that's in the book and released it on his new album and made a video for it in which he got a real mermaid and like a woman with a fishtail, like, you know, you get them. They're knocking around the earth, these women who are like real professional mermaids. So he got one of them, stuck her in the tank, in the aquarium in Paris, because that's one of the scenes in the book where he takes the mermaid, sticks her in the aquarium and watches her swimming around. And that was the video. And I didn't know that when I made the first video, so I thought I'll probably mention that in another video. But then the author demonetized my video. I'm not sure why. Probably out of spite, because I said it didn't deserve the publicity it got, but I don't know. I had a weird conversation on Instagram with him that I didn't understand. It was a very odd 30 minutes of my life. So this video is probably going to get demonetized because, you know, my first video, I didn't say all the things that I didn't like about this book. I thought I'm going to be nice because it's still pretty charming. It's a pretty charming novel. But then it did really kind of annoy me. So yeah, that was my experience of A Mermaid in Paris by Mathias Malzieu. I have 2 more that I want to talk about just quickly. The first one is Eragon. Now, when people really recommend literature to me, it usually doesn't end well. And that was the case with the last 2. So the first one was Eragon. And I got through the whole of the first book. And the thing was, like, I didn't care about any of the characters at all. Like, there was nothing about them that seemed appealing. I didn't like Eragon. I didn't like the elf character. I didn't like his professor. I can't remember what. He's played by Jeremy Irons in the movie, but I can't remember what his name is. Jeremy Irons. I didn't like any of it, basically. And not even the dragon. Like, I really like dragons, but the dragon just seemed odd and off somehow. And yeah, I just didn't really care for it. And when I got to the beginning of book 2, it's just weird. Like, they end up in this underground mountain hidden kingdom thing. And I didn't understand why he wanted to kind of back these people more than any other people. Like, what's so special about them? And in the beginning of the first book, you've got this, like, princess character who's supposed to talk in front of the assembly of all the people who are in charge. I read this a long time ago. I have vague memories of it. But what I do remember is she's really kind of freaking out because she doesn't have a nice dress to wear in front of all the officials. And I was like, girl, your people are living under a mountain. Like, surely they don't... Do they really think about this stuff? Like, they are survivors trying to scratch a living in a hollowed out mountain. Why is the dress thing so important? And then she wants to make lace in order to earn money to wage war. And that was the point where I was like, no. I read somewhere that, like, this author didn't have friends when he was a kid. And that really shows, like, he doesn't know what another human being is. Like, these people just have no souls. And their actions don't make sense. And their decisions don't make sense, and Eragon's a twat. I didn't like it at all. So, yeah. Last one, and then I'll leave you alone, is Twilight. And again, it was insanely recommended to me. Greatest book ever. Well, you gotta read it. So I did. I started reading it, and nothing much happens. And I remember, like, asking my friends, like, saying, when does something happen? And again, there was a lot of stuff in it that I thought was peculiar, because when she meets Edward and they start having conversations, and like he tells her he's a vampire and that his whole family are vampires, and he tells her that his dad works at the hospital. And my immediate thought was, oh, that makes sense, because if he works at the hospital, then he can get hold of donor blood for the other vampires in his family. Makes complete sense, like in the Watch series by Sergei Lukianenko, where part of, like, a percentage of donor blood goes to the vampires. So I thought, okay, that makes complete sense. But then he goes on and says, oh, it's really hard for us because we can't get human blood. And Belle, she goes to his house with his family, starts bleeding, they all go crazy. How does the father work at the hospital? There is blood in hospital. There are people bleeding. How can he cope with it and not the rest of them? So, yeah, I read about half of it, I think, before I was like, yeah, I'm not bothered. I really don't care. So that was my experience of Twilight. And that's it. That's my whole list done. And like I said, if you enjoyed these books, if you love them, because millions of people do, this is just my opinion, my personal feeling about these books. And read whatever you want, and you are allowed to like it. The fact that I don't like it doesn't mean that you shouldn't. You do you, and we can't like everything, I think, is the message here, despite my rambling rant in most cases about all of this. So yeah, that was my list of books, really popular books that I didn't like, and I hope you got some kind of entertainment out of this. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.